journey to hybrid and multi-cloud event. Today, we're just going to allow for people to join from their back-to-back meetings and give everybody just 2 minutes before we get started. In case you're having trouble joining the audio, please follow the instructions on your screen, and we'll be back with you at exactly 12:02. Thank you. Good afternoon once again, everybody, and thank you for joining us so promptly. Welcome to our Journey to Hybrid and Multi-Cloud event for today. Our host and presenter is Suraj Chandanani. In case you're having trouble joining the audio, please follow the instructions on the screen. Towards the end of the presentation today, you will also have a chance to ask questions, and you can see the instructions here. You'll have a panel to the right-hand side of your screen where you can enter your questions and ask them to the presenter, and they will be answered towards the end of the webinar. Our presenter for today, Suraj Chandanani, is our cloud practice leader at GBM. He's based out of our headquarters and has over 25 years of IT industry experience in various roles, from pre-sales and solution design to product and offering management. He has extensive experience in infrastructure, networking, and managed services. With, with that, I'm going to hand over to Suraj to take you through today's topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Abrar. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's staying safe and keeping healthy during these unprecedented times. I would also like to wish Ramadan Kareem. May God give all his blessings to you and your beloved ones during this holy month of Ramadan. To start off very quickly into our topic today, we've a three-point agenda. So I would like to start our topic with covering a little bit about the state of cloud in the Middle East and worldwide and how customers are using cloud today. We would also cover a couple of common hybrid use cases, which are the most common ones that we see in the region. Finally, we would run you through a typical journey an organization would undergo as they move from their on-prem deployments into a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud infrastructure. Just before we could get into the state of the cloud, one of the very important points to see are why are enterprises today moving to cloud? In the current business environments, saving costs is of topmost priority. Organizations across the region and across the world are facing IT budget cuts. There is increasing pressure to move projects from CapEx-based pricing and CapEx financing to OpEx-based ongoing expenditure. Larger projects are being broken down into smaller projects, and there is immense pressure to save cost. Another very important reason for organizations to adopt cloud is to increase their agility or time to market. The traditional methods of deploying IT require a huge amount of time that goes towards a procurement cycle, a setup cycle. The time to market for organizations to get in touch and engage their customers is significantly long in that environment. Using a cloud environment allows infrastructure and services to be available on the tap and decreases the time to market significantly. The other very important reason why organizations are looking at cloud is to accelerate innovation. And by accelerating innovation, I mean that organizations could experiment without having the fear of failure or incurring large costs in terms of capex or other expenditure that they would incur. Using the cloud environment allows you to quickly deploy, experiment, and remove that environment in case it is not successful, and without incurring the kind of expenses you would in a traditional environment. This would accelerate innovation and experimentation. The other reason for adopting cloud is operational resilience. Today, to provide operational resilience in a traditional data center, the organizations have to spend huge amounts of money in setting up multi-data centers, setting up links, monitoring, operations to monitor, manage that entire environment. But having the entire infrastructure deployed in a public cloud infrastructure allows you to spread that risk and have that entire uh, setup be put up without incurring huge costs. So you could traditionally a small organization would not be able to set up a DR, but when given a cloud environment, that would not be a very difficult thing to do. The other reasons organizations get into cloud would be for new technologies, using different AI, IoT, or multi-cloud options where they can get access to services which were almost not possible on an on-prem environment. All these initiatives underpin the journey to digital transformation, and this is probably the primary reasons why organizations are looking to move to cloud. As cloud, as the organizations start their journey into cloud, they have started with private cloud initiatives, which are mostly on-prem, and soon they realize that a private cloud initiative is probably not going to take them all the way because agility, the cost benefits, the services, most of these are available out of a public cloud setup. Hence the adoption of public cloud. Once there are services that are spread across the customer's data center, in-house, and in the public cloud infrastructure, there obviously is a need to integrate the two and coexist. That started giving a rise to adoption of hybrid cloud environment. Predominantly, all organizations today have a hybrid cloud strategy. They have defined workloads that sit in-house in their data centers, either in legacy environments or in private cloud. And they have other solutions that are sitting in public cloud environments. And then there is integration across the two. A new trend is now coming up with the multitude of different services being offered by many cloud providers. Organizations are seeking to take benefit of the best services from different public cloud environments. And that has led to a multi-cloud adoption framework. I have a bit of statistics over here from the State of the Cloud Report 2020. This is a global report. It is done by RightScale on cloud adoption. This has recently been bought over by Flexera, and the link, we will provide the link for the report. According to this report, almost 93% of enterprises have a multi-cloud strategy. Of the 93%, 87% is hybrid cloud, and 6% is where organizations have gone and started reaching out into multiple public cloud vendors to take the best of the services they can get. But predominantly, the market and the organizations are looking towards a hybrid cloud adoption. You can also note that there are very, very small percentage of organizations that are only working on private setups or only working completely in a public cloud environment, which is represented by the 1% and 6%. Moving further, I have a chart from Gartner that states the magic quadrant that shows the leaders and the niche players in the public cloud segment. We can see there that we have AWS, Microsoft, and Google on the leaders quadrant, while we have Oracle, IBM, and Alibaba in the niche quadrant. GBM has for years worked with IBM, and we offer offerings on the IBM cloud towards our customers today. However, going forward, keeping in mind the presence that AWS and Microsoft have announced in the region, we have partnered with them, and we would be bringing up offerings and services around AWS, Azure, and IBM Cloud as part of our cloud portfolio. Just a quick roundup on what's happening in the GCC region across the major cloud providers. We have AWS with a point of delivery in Bahrain. We have 3 data centers there and an edge in UAE. We have Azure with point of delivery in UAE and an announced point of delivery in Qatar. Alibaba has a delivery in UAE. We have IBM that has a point of delivery in UAE, but predominantly from a managed cloud perspective. It is not really an infrastructure as a service, but it's a managed cloud service. And then we see offerings from Google, Oracle, which are across the SaaS environment in UAE and in Saudi Arabia. From here, I would like to draw your attention to the different ways organizations use cloud and what are the common hybrid cloud use cases. One of the most common use cases is when organizations have identified point solutions in their application portfolio and moved them into SaaS infrastructure in the public cloud. There is obviously an API integration that sits between the public cloud SaaS services and the private on-prem applications. And that is one of the most common and the early adopted use cases on a hybrid cloud. The other use case that's very, very common is migration of independent workloads to public cloud. While customers' production environments are governed by data sovereignty laws, by risk and compliance, and data protection, the test and development environments can still find their way into the public cloud setup. Moving of independent workloads where production sits on-prem and is governed and regulated, while a subset of that environment sits, the dev and test sits in public environments. The third use case that we see a lot is production sitting on-prem and within the customer's data center, while the resiliency part of that particular setup, which may include anything to do with a data backup, a data archival, or DR as a service sitting back into the public cloud. These are some of the very, very common use cases that we see today for customers and organizations that have used or have deployed hybrid cloud setups. Now I have 3 more use cases which are upcoming, and you have started seeing them amongst organizations here. The first one being the integration between systems of record and systems of engagement. By systems of record, I mean systems that are your legacy applications and the core data that the organizations have. While systems of engagement could be new application, new channels of engagement that the organization would have to connect with their customers. Systems of engagement could represent mobile apps, some loyalty apps, things that would need references to the core data, but they are not really core to the organization. The SR SOE integration is typically an API integration that happens between the public and private cloud. And this is a new way of deploying hybrid cloud that we are seeing upcoming in today's market. The other use case that we see is development of cloud native applications. So as organizations try more and more to adopt a public cloud or a hybrid cloud environment, they understand that the legacy applications are not all transportable and portable in their current shape. To be able to do that, the organizations need to rewrite or refactor the applications into microservices based architecture. And that leads to a DevOps agile development type of setup that needs to be put in place. So we are seeing both types of use cases where customers would have a DevOps on-prem, something like an OpenShift environment on-prem, which would lead the DevOps setup internally. And once the application or the images are ready to deploy, they are deployed off-prem into public cloud. So that's one use case. The other use case could be that the DevOps cycle is actually happening in the public cloud. And when it comes to a production use case, it comes back on-prem into an OpenShift or a container hosting type of platform on-prem. So we are seeing both ways in this particular use case. The last use case I have is capacity augmentation. This is when the data center has the services, has the capability, but when it is running out of capacity, those particular workloads partially burst into the public cloud. One of the examples that we've recently seen in this is, for example, customers may have a VDI setup that runs in the data center for their users. In case the resources on the in-data center environment starts running out, there are solutions that will allow us to burst into a public cloud infrastructure and deploy VDI sessions from there and then move back. So this sort of a cloud bursting type of use case is again something that we are seeing deployed in a practical scenario. Going from here, I would draw your attention to the next few slides that would cover a typical journey and all the elements that are involved in that journey to cloud as you start conceptualizing your move from on-prem to a public hybrid setup. So most organizations need to plan their move. Once planned, it needs to be executed. Once executed, the new environment is drastically different from the legacy IT environment, and it needs to be managed. That's a separate phase. And finally, in an operational phase, it needs to be optimized, and it is imperative that the optimization cycle leads back into a redesign, refine, and taking advantage of the cloud environment. So these are the 4 phases customers look at moving their applications from on-prem into a hybrid cloud scenario. With that, we will start covering each of these phases one by one to see what are the different aspects that go into each one of them. So as you plan your journey to cloud, it is very, very important to see the readiness, to have a business case, to be able to have a full inventory of your applications, to understand the security and compliance posture that is required around each one of those applications, to be able to migrate those applications from on-prem into the public cloud in a way that you are able to cater for the dependencies, the complications, and the interlinkages between the applications. And finally, you need to plan your own skills and center of excellence within your organization on the new technologies that you're moving to. For this, GBM has 2 services that help you outline these aspects in your planning as you move from your on-prem into public cloud. The first part of that, the first service is a cloud readiness assessment service, which essentially is checking on your business objectives, aligning them with the application portfolio, getting in touch with each of the application owners, prioritizing which applications are need more governance, risk, compliance, which applications are difficult to migrate, which applications are going to be the quick wins, uh, understand a pain gain analysis across the portfolio, and then come out with a quick TCO to give you a directional business case to support your move to cloud. This gives you the benefit that you can draw out of this is from a planned methodology of running through the entire portfolio, understanding all the aspects that go through for each application, and making sure that you have a, a business driver or a business case to support your movement. The second assessment in this particular area that helps you plan your move to cloud is an application discovery and migration planning service. This particular service is a tool-based discovery. So after you have got your directional business case, you understand the applications, the ones that we would be considering, we run a application discovery in your data center with a tool. The reason we do this is that it is able to capture all the dependencies for those applications. And many a times there are instances where uh, things got missed, maybe they were not documented, or there were services that those applications were communicating with, which we were not considering and which we would need to consider now. So the application discovery exercise essentially would discover the applications, would discover the resources that run those applications. It would also discover the external applications that our consideration set is communicating with to make sure that we have the right dependencies. This would give us two things. One, it tells us the target environment that those applications will consume in a public cloud. So it's not an exact one-to-one lift and shift. It takes into consideration utilizations, it takes into consideration dependencies, it takes into consideration things like how long the workload is going to run and which cost optimization model to be taken for that particular application. So this gives us an exact target environment and allows us to have a detailed business case that can support the entire move to cloud. It does a TCO analysis of an existing setup and a proposed setup and gives you in very clear terms the benefits of doing the migration. It also produces a detailed migration plan. The migration plan basically clubs up applications that are talking to each other. It identifies external services that the applications need and hence is able to set up a roadmap that allows you to move external services or access to external services to public cloud and then have a wave by wave migration of your application portfolio. The two services together, they work towards developing your business case and your migration plan. Just to put it in context of a typical move to cloud initiative, an organization would have its own business drivers. These could be anything from reducing costs to increasing agility to increasing resiliency. There would be a certain number of business drivers an organization would have. Post a cloud readiness assessment, those business drivers would be mapped with the applications and built into a directional business case. The directional business case is essentially telling you which are the applications you can quickly move, which are the more difficult ones, which will cost more to move, and which are the very complex ones, or which are the ones that you don't need to move. Post that, we run a tool-based discovery, which will result in a detailed business case, exact target environment, and an exact cost-benefit analysis of moving your workload. And this is done pre-migration. The other thing it also does is sets up the migration plan. Having done your migration planning, next stage is doing the actual move. And as you get into the actual move, there are a number of things that you need to consider as you make your move. One of the first things that you need to look at is the landing zone design. And by the landing zone, I mean the part of the public cloud where you're going to connect your data center to. What exactly needs to be the security posture of that particular environment? What needs to be the governance? How are we going to capture the logs? How are we going to monitor the different uh, resources that are running there? So all this goes towards setting up the landing zone. Once the landing zone is established and designed and established, the applications are moved in a wave migration process. So if there is any dependencies, for example, there may be dependencies of Active Directory or authentication dependencies or DNS dependencies. These dependencies would be put in place first before moving the applications. Then applications would be moved in closed clusters. So if there are applications that talk a lot to each other, they'll be moved as a cluster. And different clusters would move in different migration waves. Movement can be done through automated migration tooling most of the time. In certain cases, there are situations where this is done manually if the applications are very old and not supported by the new tools. However, once moved, tested and cut over, those particular applications are then taken off from the on-prem environment and run in the public cloud. The other two parts, which is the replatforming and application modernization, are the more complex parts of the migration. So typically, these are not the contenders for an initial migration move, or you would rather move a monolithic application up and then refactor and redesign it in the cloud once your move is successful. Let me elaborate a little bit more on what are the different migration strategies. So once you discover, assess, you have a migration portfolio, you have an application portfolio, and you want to now define a migration strategy for each of the applications. So the first and the most simplest and probably constituting 90% of the workload is the rehost relocate strategy. Now with the rehost relocate, we are essentially moving workloads from in the data center in an automated way into the public cloud, doing a transition, validation, and cutting over. Relocation is cases where there is absolutely no change, and these could be represented by containers that you will be running in your data center, which you will lift and shift into a public cloud environment. Or these could even be VMs running on VMware in the data center and moving on to a product like VMC in public cloud. The rehost environment, there are certain applications that you cannot move in an automated way. And those would most likely need a manual install, config, and deploy. And those will be identified during the migration planning phase. The other one that we see a lot is the replatform, where the applications themselves are running on certain legacy setups. These may be databases running on Unix environments or other platforms which cannot directly be taken into public cloud. In those scenarios, we would normally do a replatform exercise on-prem. And once the replatform on-prem is successful, we would then lift and shift that into the public cloud. Some of the candidates, which are large, complex applications, need to be the ones that are identified to be broken down into microservice architecture, or those that can take advantage of various services running in public cloud, need to undergo a innovation redesign cycle as they move to cloud. And these type of applications are typically a second phase or are moved in a rehost relocate fashion, but later refactored in cloud. Of course, there are certain candidates that would move into SaaS, and that's shown here. And then there would be certain applications that we would retire because we moved the functionality into a SaaS environment, for example, or we would retain in our data centers. To To support these strategies and the migration exercises, GBM has certain application migration services which allow for lift and shift type of migration, rehost, and redeploy. We also have replatform, and we can help in identifying the refactor and redesign applications. So with that, the services that we offer to our customers would help customers identify the migration strategies, identify the application portfolio, identify the wave plans, actually execute the landing zone design, deploy the applications, and then get into a replatform, refactor, redesign cycle. Here we have the app modernization services where we could help organizations set up a DevOps environment on-prem or a DevOps environment in the public cloud where you could redevelop the monolithic applications into containers and microservices and then have a more agile development platform. Moving on from move, the next two phases are more around operations and operational excellence. So GBM has a host of services around the manage, which include things like monitoring the environment, maintaining an SLA or an OLA, operating it, doing remediation, being able to do license management and asset management, being able to manage and maintain a cybersecurity GRC posture, and finally manage the backups and DR. Look at the managed services that sit around cloud. These would include offering reporting and dashboards for your entire environment. This is not just the cloud environment, but also the on-prem environment. It would give you dashboard views, asset tracking, end-to-end service performance, and various KPI dashboards that would help you achieve your business objectives. Obviously, there is infrastructure management, which would involve provisioning, doing remediation on the infrastructure, managing the configurations, image and patch management, doing the backups, and also maintaining the disaster recovery posture or the DR sites. It comes with a service desk offering, which will allow for the standard managed services processes of incident management, change management, problem and request management. The other thing that Cloud Managed Services has is a cost optimization service, which allows customers to have insights in their cloud consumption, consolidate the billing, doing the tagging to different departments, and getting insights into what can be optimized to reduce the consumption. Finally, we work with our security practice to deliver the cybersecurity managed services offerings. And these include identity access management, encryption, data protection, log and security monitoring, and doing vulnerability management, vulnerability scans, intrusion scans, things like that. The last phase of the journey to cloud is optimize. And you cannot talk more about optimize because that is finally that finally defines the success of your journey to cloud. If you take your on-prem environments and just move them into cloud and without a cycle of optimization, undoubtedly you would land up in costs that are beyond your expectations and that are above what you had initially envisioned. So in terms of optimization, there can be the simple optimizations, which are around the infrastructure, making sure that we are only picking up infrastructure that is needed at the time it's needed. We are using the right cost models. So we are using reserved instances where we think workloads are running 24/7 for the year. And we are using other more smarter cost models for other transient workloads. It then moves on to things like automating and making things more without human intervention, or improving the performance of the workloads running in the cloud, or improving the reliability. So optimization has various angles to it. It's not just cost optimization, it goes across optimization of the resiliency posture, optimization of the performance of the application, optimization of the security, or reworking some of the applications to refactor them, to use serverless and containers. So all this comes under the domain of optimization. If we look at the same report from Flexera, the State of Cloud report 2020, it says that the top priorities for customers who have moved to cloud is actually to optimize the existing cloud usage. The other ones that point in the same direction are to expand the use of containers. So all about refactoring existing applications and moving them into containers. Better financial reporting on cloud costs, being able to tag them to the right departments, be able to know who are your big spenders, and to do asset management and software licenses. So the optimizations, along with the managed services, GBM has a slew of optimization services which help you achieve some of these objectives over here. So with that, we have covered the four phases that organizations are looking at while they move from on-prem to cloud. At this point, I would want to highlight and draw your attention to the next webinars that we have. And we've covered our journey to cloud end to end, from plan to actually migrate, manage, and optimize. I would want to take any questions on the topic now.
Thank you, Suraj. So in case anyone has questions, you have the instructions on the screen. You can use the panel to the right-hand side to ask them. We have one question, Suraj. So what are the pros and cons of having a data warehouse / data mart with analytics on a public cloud?
Hello?
Can you hear me now, Suraj?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. The question is, what are the pros and cons of having a data warehouse / data mart with analytics on a public cloud?
In a cloud? Okay. So the big benefit of having data, so the cloud offers extremely cost-effective measures of keeping data on cloud and being able to use servers to mine that particular data. So having a data warehouse in a public cloud will reduce costs in retaining that data in the data mart. So you will be using things like object storage to store it, unlike in an on-prem environment where you would actually go into a CapEx to feed a big storage engine to hold that data. And when you want to execute on it, you are only using instances and compute at that point in time as you execute your queries. So the overall cost of running a data mart is significantly lower. The other thing that's there is that in a cloud, you have access to almost infinite resources. So the data size can be almost infinite, and the compute power that's available to us to execute a query is also almost infinite. So we don't have to, we can shoot a query which probably gets executed faster in a cloud environment compared to a on-prem where we'll be limited by the resources that we have put on the floor. There are significant advantages in looking at analytics in cloud. The analytics engines can be cloud native, which are provided by the cloud providers, or they could be a cloud pack for data, for example, from IBM, which can be implemented in a public cloud environment and can take advantage of the infrastructure and the resources that are available. So it's across the board.
Thank you, Suraj. We have another question. Uh, so I think this is very relevant to this region. What is the status and what is your view on the status of GCC regulations to move to the cloud? As we know, there are some challenges with that. So what is your opinion on it?
Again, we are watching for regulatory rulings or compliance measures that get announced. But at present, while there are no strong regulations asking you to keep data in, there is none that says that you can take it out. So it's still a bit of a gray area. But largely, all organizations are very careful in keeping PII type of data or medical or financial type of data outside. There are solutions that that can provide compliance as you move into a public cloud environment with encryption and organizations being in firm control of the keys to those encryptions. So you could be PCI DSS compliant, you could probably be HIPAA compliant while running in a public cloud. Also, even if there is data sovereignty that might get, come in that case, also, as we saw in the initial slides, there is now significant presence of large public cloud vendors in the region. We have public clouds in UAE from Microsoft Azure, Alibaba, we have IBM, and we have in Bahrain again for AWS, and we have a local edge in UAE. So we are seeing that these public cloud vendors are also taking cognizance of the local rulings and making sure that they are there to support these rulings. So if there are data sovereignty type of restrictions that will come in the future, you will see expansion of public cloud footprints across the region also.
Thanks,
Again,
Suraj.
it's not 100% clear at this point.
Thank you, Suraj. So we have another question which touches about upon one of the points you made just now. So the question is, what is the advantage, and I believe this is from Bahrain, what is the advantage of going on, for example, AWS in Bahrain instead of Azure or IBM, which is outside Bahrain? So where you have a region, what is the advantage of going with the region versus something that's outside the region?
So GBM has, so when we approach a application portfolio for an organization and we have to advise that, certain applications go into Azure or certain other applications go to AWS, it's important to look at the application itself. In certain cases, especially around Microsoft type of development and Microsoft technologies, those applications might sit much better in an Azure environment and take benefit of a SQL database as a service running in an Azure environment along with an Azure Active Directory versus trying to build them into AWS. So GBM would normally take a cloud agnostic stand and build solutions across public cloud environments to fit the application and the need portfolio that the organization presents. However, sometimes there are situations where uh, organizations are very specific about data residency, so they want it to be in Bahrain or they want it to be in UAE. In those scenarios, we would just work with those data centers.
Thanks, Suraj. I believe we have time to take one more question. So, the question that I have is, can you explain the prerequisites of utilizing VDI in cloud by extending the private VDI?
So there is a solution that GBM also runs on this, where you're going to extend a private VDI type of deployment. This, I believe, uses Citrix technologies and will allow you to deploy your desktop agents on a public cloud infrastructure, and it could be Azure. So if it is UAE, it could be Azure. Otherwise, it could be AWS. And it would dynamically do that and spin up virtual desktop instances as and when required, and then scale them back. So yes, there are solutions. I would be happy to address any specific requirements, but yeah, they are there, and they're the ones that we are doing are mostly around the Citrix platform.
Thank you, Suraj. With that, I think we're at the end of our session. Thank you to everyone that has joined us. To everyone who is registered, you will receive an email with the details on how you can access a version of this presentation and the recording. Please do give us your feedback on the presentation and let us know if there's anything more that you would like to hear. And do reach out to us for any further specific questions that you may have. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.